Good morning, Bitcoiners. I hope you're doing well. I'm loving my life. Who could complain on a day like today? Things are going great. Things are going great. You know, the new interface that we use here is really slow. So I got to figure something out. Whoops. Don't know what I just did. Just give me a second. Hope you're still all there. Clicking buttons, don't do it. Not recommended. Not recommended. Okay, we're better. We're better now. B for victory says, Bomata. Good morning, Bitcoiners. I really do miss when the old interface, and I just came in and there was like 100 comments right away. Much slower, but that's okay. We're going to get there. Defina, we love it. Live long and prosper with Bitcoin. Sean recommends, good morning, all. Aqualodge, good morning. Hope you're doing well. Sluggo, 123. Good afternoon. Depends on where you are, Sluggo. I prefer to enjoy the East Coast time zone. I don't like leaving the East Coast time zone. Good morning. Bitcoin on the main stage, just as Nolan foretold. Isn't it? It's amazing. We're going to talk about other things that I foretold, because I think I got more than that just right? Didn't sound like it was going to happen 2 years ago that all of the political focus in America would be on Bitcoin, but here we are. We're loving it. Lucky, catching live. Shalom, Lucky. Shalom, shalom. Hope you're doing well, Lucky. Oh, Shawnee Lady, good morning from the beautiful, beautiful morning in the Great Plains. I love the skies there. I love the skies there. I didn't think I would like it as much as I did until I actually saw it. It's incredibly beautiful. Tom Carroll, thank you for this video, sir. Well, thank you for coming. Indeed, I'll remind you, Tom, I get more enjoyment out of doing these videos than you get out of watching them. And I don't deny that, and I don't doubt that you'd like the videos you come, all right? But I get a lot of enjoyment out of doing them, so. Phony Fiat is finished. I like the alliteration. Very good. I might steal it for a title one day. I tried to work on the shadow banking. It's related. It just didn't come. I thought I had a great title today, and I just couldn't figure it out. I should have actually asked ChatGPT for some help. It's okay. I thought I could do something more with shadow banking. James, good morning, crew. Sending well wishes from the Hamburg crew. We love Hamburg. What a beautiful city. We love it there. Are we making fun of Germans today? I'm not sure. I don't remember if I have Germany in my notes. Lightning Ven, good morning. Hope your pizza day was great. My wife made a delicious Satoshi special. If you don't know what a Satoshi special pizza is, it came from the emails that were released this past February, March or something. A new trove of Satoshi emails were uncovered, wherein he describes jalapeno and pineapple pizza as being very delicious. So we make jalapeno pineapple pizza. The kids don't like the jalapenos, so we had to make two, but we had a good time. A lot of bacon and ham. It was excellent. And of course, the jalapenos. The pineapple was not as good. I haven't made it since I got back from Barbados, and the pineapple was no good compared to Barbados. So we enjoyed the pizza, but I've had better. My wife has made better, but the crust was perfect. Very good crust. There you go. All right, let's acknowledge what we got going on this morning. It's another great day, but that's fine. We've had a heat wave here. It's been hot, right? We're going to talk some hot news in Moscow time. We're going to get to it. So let's just acknowledge we got a sunrise. It's happening. Bitcoin's running, everybody. Let's have a coffee. Talk about what's new. All right. Moscow time just keeps getting better as fiat apocalypse sets in here. It's just getting funnier and funnier and funnier. Here's a little palette teaser. Let's get going now. These are my new favorite Moscow time stories, okay? I've been bringing them to you for a few days now, but now that it's summer, I just love the stories where it's like, we're in India and it's hot. We're in Florida, hot. I got more. And if you go, I'm getting them from Reuters. Reuters has a Reuters Science News, they call it, and it's a Twitter feed. And it's the same story. I think they only do about 2 or 3 stories a day, and they just retweet them incessantly. So if you go on, you're going to find these stories just again, repeated again and again, and it's always the same thing. Ready? So imagine if all the news, and this is Reuters Science, and it's about 20% of the entire day's worth of tweets from Reuters Science. It's all some iteration of these, and this one in particular. All right, ready? This is science news, everyone. Okay, ready? Moscow Times Science Edition. Working on a highway project in one of India's hottest areas this summer, Banwari Singh handles iron bars that he says often turn red hot. It's hot in India, guys. It's hot in India. This one's good too. This is also from Reuters Science, obviously, right? Obviously. Aquatic life from coral reefs to fish in Thailand's Eastern Gulf Coast is suffering as sea surface temperatures hit record highs this month amid a regional heat wave, worrying scientists. Oh, it's Thailand, guys. Thailand's hot again. Oh my God. Science news. This is 2 of their stories. They have another one, which is also funny. Half of the world's mangrove systems are at risk of collapse as a result of human activity, rising sea levels, and extreme weather, according to the latest survey by an international conservation group. Oh, it's hot in Thailand. It's hot in India. It's hot where the sea mangroves grow. It's hot. It's hot. So good. Now, you know what, I went into the articles, and of course human climate change, but it wasn't in the headline, and I'm trying to really just stick to headlines. You don't need to read all these articles, but good thing, right? So they didn't tie it to climate change in the headline. It was just India's hot and Thailand's hot, right? But luckily Canada's there for us, right? So Canada is going to tie something to climate change, but it's not hot because Canada can't really do the hot stories, even though it's been hot, because everyone's like, but it's cold, so it doesn't work, right? So CTV News in Canada with the following. This is it, guys. It's perfect. They got a new plan in Canada, right? Doctors, patients want options to reduce dialysis waste, adding to climate change. This kidney dialysis is adding to climate change, everyone. Now, the good news is in Canada, they have a separate option, which is to just kill the people so they can just suicide them. So at least there's less climate change with that. I don't know about the climate change and the emissions of decomposing human bodies, but I'm sure they could figure that out. I mean, I'm sure they could cap it or something, like carbon capture from the suicides when they cremate the body. Some clever thing should be out there. I'm sure it's out there, right? But indeed, the big news in Canada is, that they already tackled the bagels. So they got rid of the fire, because we make our bagels differently in Montreal. Usually there's a fire in the actual place where you get them, and they pull them out of the fire so you can eat them and they're delicious. But in Canada, we're doing our part. We're doing our part in climate change. So no more open fire bagels in Montreal, because it was causing 0.0000001% of the climate change in the world. So it had to stop, right? I bet you kidney dialysis is about the same. So we got to make sure, either we just let them die or we stop climate change, because kidney dialysis, right? Canada doing its part. Oh, this one's good. This comes from America. Right? We got some good America stuff here, right? Never underestimate America, right? This one's good. Illinois politicians aim to change word offender to justice impacted individual. Is a justice impacted individual. I got the best justice impacted individual here, right? Some people call Michael Cohen the star witness in the case against the justice impacted individual Donald Trump. So this is a perfect headline. This was sourced to me from some of you beautiful Breakup gang joiners. It's excellent, right? It's just excellent. So here we go. MSNBC. How Michael Cohen's Past lies make him a more credible witness, right? Because, you know, he lied in the past. So now we know, remember, I was just telling you, if you study how someone lies, you can figure out how they lie. So the next time you can see the patterns and the tells, right? Maybe that's what they meant. No matter how much Donald Trump's defense tries to discredit his former lawyer, the fact remains that he lied to protect his client. Guys, Michael Cohen's more credible now. He's more credible, okay? It's so good. It's so good. Now, Phil Bump always running a little bit of interference, right? He's like, which brainwashing's working and which isn't working and what's going on? And Phil Bump here with this analysis by Phil Bump. Donald Trump Jr. suggested this week that support for his father in the city was some sort of underground movement. But New York City gave Trump more votes in 2020 than all but 3 U.S. counties. So here, when Phil Bump is saying, well, it's obvious that Trump's going for New York. He was always doing great in New York, right? He's not done, though. He's got more. So it's not quite clicking, right? You know, the Biden and young people and what's going on. And a lot of young people think he's stupid and all that kind of stuff. And then they've been running these lines, this thing where he's defending democracy. He's going to stand up for democracy. He's going to protect democracy, right? All the talking points. Phil Bump saying younger and non-white voters are less likely to express concern about democracy or express anxiety about the election, right? Biden's base isn't as freaked out as he might want them to be. Phil Bump, you know, the young people aren't freaked out like they should be. What's going on here? What's wrong with these young people? Why aren't they freaked out? They got to defend democracy, right? They got to fortify democracy. What's wrong with them? Phil, you're great. Now, this one's amazing. This is from Aaron Blake. He's kind of like a low-grade Phil Bump over at Washington Post. He doesn't put out 3 articles a day like Phil Bump. We got to give Phil Bump credit. He does 3 articles a day sometimes. It's actually a lot. So here what they're saying is, all right, so, you know, Trump's doing really well, and then the things aren't working with the fortifying democracy, and they're not freaked out. They're not standing up for democracy. They don't care. So Aaron Blake is going with the following. In his attempt to return to the White House, Donald Trump has repeatedly avoided taking positions on key issues. So according to the Washington Post, Donald Trump's real problem is we don't know what his policies are. We don't know his policies. What are Trump's policies? I don't know. He's not doing it. Okay, so hold on. I had one more that I wanted to bump up here. Let me just make sure I still have it in order. It was a beauty. It was a beauty. Okay, I think I'm okay. All right, we'll come back to it. No problemo. We're working our way up, though. We've got some real classics at the end here. Some of the greatest, I think, that I've ever found. So I'm just trying to make sure I put it in the right order. All right. So indeed, right, we've got Trump. There are no concerns. But you know, Trump doesn't have policies, right? There's no policies. That's the problem. But now this one from the Associated Press. This one's really good. Election deniers moving closer to GOP mainstream, report shows, as Trump allies fill Congress. Election deniers, everyone. Election deniers, right? Associated Press calling people election deniers. Now, this one from the New York Times in a similar theme. All right, in a similar theme. House GOP moves to crack down on non-citizen voting, sowing a false narrative, right? So they're cracking down on non-citizen voting, according to the New York Times. But they're just sowing a false narrative, right? So there's no non-citizen voting. The bills have virtually no chance of becoming law, but they are still used to amplify Donald Trump's false claims of widespread illegal voting by non-citizens. And Vivek Ramaswamy adds, the New York Times vehemently claims that the non-citizen voting problem is a false narrative. If it's such a non-issue, it's interesting that they're so staunchly opposed to a bill that bans it. It's a non-issue, but don't do it. It's a non-issue, but you can't do it. But it's not an issue. Now, we all know Elon Musk and others have let us all know it's really about the census, vote allocation and stuff like that. It was something I used to admire about the United States, because in Canada, we don't have that. We have to really gerrymander in Canada when it comes to reallocation after population growth. We have to deliberately change the allocation of each county, increase the number of seats, whatever the formula is. It has to be done by Parliament each time. Very complicated, actually, very political, and it shouldn't be, but it is. So I always said, well, the Americans have it great. They have an automatic system. They do the census and it rejigs the thing. Now that I see it in practice, it's not a good system, right? So speaking of election interference, is this election interference? We don't know. The New York Times going at Nicole Shanahan. Listen to their headline on RFK's vice presidential running mate, Nicole Shanahan. A running mate's history, $1 billion, cocaine, and a fling with Elon Musk. Nicole Shanahan, a lawyer who was married to Sergey Brin, a Google founder, led a rarefied and sometimes turbulent life in Silicon Valley, according to a Times examination. Kristen Grind, who wrote it, says, inside the life of Nicole Shanahan, all the details she kept from the public are here. And then you can go in and read it. And it's here's the story. Miss Shanahan has a fortune of more than $1 billion that stems largely from her divorce settlement last year with Sergey Brin, a founder of Google, whose net worth exceeds $145 billion. Three people with knowledge of her finances said. During their 5-year marriage, Miss Shanahan partied with Silicon Valley's elite and used recreational drugs, including cocaine, ketamine, and psychedelic mushrooms. According to 8 people and documents reviewed by the New York Times, Ms. Shanahan and Brin separated after she had a sexual encounter with Elon Musk in 2021. She's a whore, according to the New York Times. A gold-digging whore. Don't vote for her. Oh, here's a good one. Oh, this is from Canada. I forgot about this one. This was the one I was looking for that was out of order. I meant to bring it back. So this comes from the Dow Jones Newswire. Okay, now I'm reluctant if I should put the point, because it's so subtle that I might have to add the point to this one. Okay, because normally I wouldn't, but I want to make sure we all see it. Okay. All right. So this is an actual, like, the associate. This is just a Wire headline. Like, it's just like clunk Wire. You know, AP, the Associated Press, Reuters. This is just, you know, this is just a Wire, right? It's just a Wire headline. And the context is, in Canada, they're about to up the capital gains tax on rich people. So I guess they're going to have to pay, I think the cap gains is going to something like 70 or 80% or something crazy like that. Anything above 200,000 Canadian trash tokens, then you got to pay this. So here's their headline. I don't remember the exact formulas. Of course, I don't have to care. It's stupid Canada. Who would pay taxes in this shithole? Okay, here's what it is, though. Canada capital gains tax change could proceed without legislation. So you don't need to pass a law to double income tax or capital gains tax on rich people. You don't have to write it down. Just do it later. Just take the money and we'll fix it later. Don't worry about it. It's fine. Taxation without legislation. Very normal. Very normal. Okay. Don't look too close. It happens all the time. It's fine, right? You can just raise those taxes. It's fine. All right. Now, these are the best ones of the day. I saved these ones for the end because, again, you know, I know it happens a lot. If we ever do create some kind of a museum, some kind of a, you know, we look back, we're on a Bitcoin standard. We're looking back now about late stage fiat and how funny it was, and what were the things that what they were writing in the news, and what were the fake news people propagating the fiat system saying, and how crazy was it all? How psycho were they all, right? I've said before, maybe this one is the greatest, and maybe this one is the greatest. It's hard to choose. I don't always know the answer, but maybe this one is the greatest, okay? Maybe it's the greatest. And it comes to us from the Atlantic. The Atlantic. Oh, bless you, Atlantic. I love you. You are great. I don't know what I would do without you, right? I just don't know what I would do. Here's what we got from the Atlantic, written by Annie Lowry, who's made several appearances here on our Moscow Time. She asks, I try to answer the question, how is Joe Biden losing the election with an economy like this? The headline is voters don't care about the economy as much as they think. Oh, I missed that one. Hold on, I got to get it back. I missed one of them. There was a different headline that got erased somehow, but that's okay. Her other headline is the worst, best economy ever. It's the worst, best economy ever, guys. Why Biden is getting no credit for the boom. He's getting no credit for the boom, right? Her conclusion is, in short, people hate inflation. Folks just don't love Biden. Partisanship means you don't get credit for a good economy like you used to. Bad economies are more salient than good economies. Voters in general are more motivated by non-economic issues. So nice. Thank you, Atlantic. Thank you for supplying us with this beautiful stream of fake news. I don't know what we would do without your Moscow time coming from the Atlantic. It would be tough. We got one more from The Guardian. This one's also good. This is also very good. In a similar vein, they're not worried about why Biden's not getting credit for it so much, but they're here to tell you you're dumb, okay? Majority of Americans wrongly believe that U.S. is in recession, and most blame Biden, right? Exclusive Harris poll for The Guardian shows 55% believe economy is shrinking, in troubling sign for president's re-election bid, right? A majority of Americans wrongly believe. They wrongly believe. The majority of Americans are wrong that we're in a recession. Don't you remember the changing definitions of recession? Come on, keep up. You're not doing it. Lasho. So that's our Moscow time for the day. That's what we got for Moscow time. We got that from Moscow time. Robert Schmidt says, kidney dialysis causes cancer in California like everything else. So good. Person Groves is PC. I'm offended. Hold on. I saw a good one here. Where are we? Well, I thought I saw it go through. Oh yeah, this one from Muslim Bitcoiner. I wanted to see this. New York banned brick oven for climate reasons. Now it's lost the pizza title to Connecticut. It's actual news, and yet Mayor Adams is schooled and in denial. Well, I'm told Connecticut was always great. I have not had pizza in Connecticut. I don't make it up to Connecticut very much. Professor Ivo, BTC, carbon capture from the suicides. Mean Fava Bean. I'm sure. Did I have any white privilege back there, guys? Did I do any white? No, I don't think I did any white privilege today. I think we missed a bit of white privilege. There was one that I briefly retweeted yesterday from the New York Times, but it was a fake of a fake. It's hard to tell, but they didn't say that Bitcoiners are the white privileged people. That was a troll, a funny troll. All right, so let's go back to the that theme of, why don't Americans understand what's going on in the economy? Why are they so stupid? Half of them believe that there's a recession. And Lasho says the following: a low info and highly politically polarized citizenry is capable of believing anything, even something as nonsensical as this. And he brings up that Harris poll, right? The half of US wrongly believe that America's in recession. Now, it got me thinking, right, about what this looks like, what the degradation looks like, what recession even looks like. How can you measure it? Because indeed, the definition has changed 100 times, right? It used to be 2 successive quarters, so 6 months of negative GDP. That was the definition of recession that we lived with and grew up with our whole lives. And then when that didn't fit, it started to change, and we've had these rotating definitions of what it is for quite a while. Now, again, I don't take any of those definitions. I think they're all silly. They're all trying to look at a huge problem that is world spanning, and you're trying to look at it with a microscope. It doesn't work, right? Economists trying to put into words what these things are, it sort of misses the mark. And the reason is, I think anyway, that economics blend with psychology in a way that I think all Bitcoiners recognize. It's kind of the point of what we do here, right? We call it the breakup because We talk about relationships, psychological relationships we have with money, and the decisions we make and the choices we make every day. And so I've always taken the Austrian school approach of the economy really being a psychological engine. That's what you understand. The Austrians don't try to qualify economics in terms of math. They admit there are numbers, right? Of course, there's numbers, right? We're always talking about numbers, but it's not math. It's something else, right? It is much more psychological. Numbers, but in a game of psychology. And so that's where the Keynesians go totally wrong, thinking that you can quantify all of economics in these formulas and in these mathematical equations. It's not really there, right? Because we're not logical. We're just simply not logical people. We can get used to really bad things. We can be very selfish. We can do all kinds of things that prioritize our own wants and getting rid of our own fears before anything else logical. So one of the big things that Bitcoiners want to see in the long term is this return, this subconscious return to long-term thinking versus the short-term dopamine delivery type thinking we have today. And so this was going around yesterday, and this talks more about the type of recession that we're in, because it's not a recession, it's a collapse. It's a fiat apocalypse, right? It's the end of the system. It's not a 2 quarters in a row of lower gains, lower GDP. It looks like something different, and it looks like the psychology of the system is sputtering. The psychology of the system cannot perpetuate. It can't go forward. So this was heavily shared yesterday, and it's a 4chan post from 2013, so 11 years ago, saying the following, right? And then it was written, I guess, May 1st, 2013. So a time we can all sort of remember. I was already into Bitcoin by now, right? I'm starting to get obsessed with Bitcoin for the very reasons that he's alluding to here. And this is what he says. There will be no collapse the way some of these people think. It's not going to be like the movie Dawn of the Dead or whatever, where one day suddenly shit hits the fan and prices skyrocket and everyone begins to riot and the SS comes marching down the street to kill everyone. There'll be no happening. It's far more insidious than that. Read the poem The Hollow Men by T.S. Eliot and you'll understand. You'll just notice that everyday simple things will become a little more expensive. Everyone's homes and apartments will start to get smaller. Your work hours will get longer, but your pay will decrease. You'll see family and friends less and find that in time you care less about them. Every day you'll find yourself lowering your standards for everything: work, food, relationships, etc. Job security will no longer exist as a concept. You'll notice houses and apartments shrinking. People will start hanging on to clothing longer and longer. Less people will get married, even less will have children. People will engross themselves in technological distractions and fantasy while never truly experiencing the real world. Whatever dream people used to have about their lives, about what their lives were going to be, will become for them a distant memory. The only thing left for them will be the reality of their debt and their poverty. And every minute of every day, they will be told, you are stupid, ugly, and weak, but together we are free, prosperous, and safe. That is the collapse, the reduction of the American man into a feudal serf, incapable of feeling love or hate, incapable of seeing the pitiful nature of his situation for what it is or recognizing his own self-worth. That's the recession, right? This has been going on for a long time. This is the thing that Bitcoiners are trying to solve, not the quarterly report earnings from some stupid place that nobody cares about, right? I told a friend that $900 Bitcoin was too late. We all had that feeling at the time. There you go. So now, if you put that into context, if you put that into what we're talking about here and why this psychological thing is important, we got a board today. We got a reused whiteboard, right? It's a reused whiteboard. But indeed, this is one that I've often held on to. And what it's really talks about here is Jungian psychology, right? So you've heard Jungian psychology thrown about a lot, right? People love Jungian psychology. Jordan Peterson is really a Jungian psychologist. That's the kind of stuff he's always going on about. Now, the important thing you need to know about Jungian psychology is that we're divided between our ego, and that's sort of all the things we know and consciously think about, external objects, and our inner world, which Jung calls our shadow, right? So it's a really important concept. And what he often talks about as the psychological frame that people need to embrace, let's say, the psychological frame for mental health according to the Jungian model is that you have to integrate your shadow, right? You've got to take the shadow, and the shadow is the collective unconscious, your individual unconscious. And what happens is it pushes up. And if you don't encounter it, if you don't listen to what your subconscious is going to say, you're going to have a stunted mental growth, a stunted spiritual growth in his context, right? If you're a believer in those things, you can just think of it in terms of psychology and a physical body as well, though, if you're not into the spiritual part. But the point is you need this individuation. And individuation begins with encountering. Now, I often make this point, right, that encounter involves counting. It's not just a word. It's not just that it's rhymes or that the letters are the same. Encounter means taking stock of, right? Like taking the cut of, taking the dimensions of. It's a form of measuring, right? So counting is a big part of measuring. Now, you can use this model, this Jungian psychological model, for individuals, but you can apply it to the state as well. Right? It applies to larger collective organisms like a nation state. They have the same sort of psychological format, the same psychological frame, and a shadow is a big part of it. It's why I often make this connection between Bitcoin and America, that they're two sides of the same stream, right? They're two sides of the same thing. And so you've got to be able to take your shadow, you've got to be able to integrate your shadow in order, taking inventory, Jose says. Yes, exactly, taking inventory. So you've got to be able to do this. Now, as a society, because we cannot even count the money, we cannot encounter America's shadow. It's become very difficult to do, right? America seems unaware of the troubles it's caused, and now many Americans do. And I'm not here to whip Americans and make them feel bad about their yeah, I've been getting into Terrence Howard as well, Tommy, and that's part of the math thing, right? That's part of the math thing. So I'm only just getting into Terrence Howard, so I'm not gonna go on about him. My only thing I don't like about Terrence Howard so far is going on about patents and all this shit, right? It sounds like Craig Wright. I don't care about fucking patents. They're dead. They're finished, right? Sorry, they're done. They're not going to help anybody. Patenting stuff is for stupid people at this point. Like, there's just no point, right? Copyright. I did my whole law school dissertation on copyrights and patents and gene patentings. I did 2 huge papers when I graduated from law school. In order to get out of having to go to class, you could do these directed research paper things. So that's what I did 2 times. And they were my best grades in law school. I was not a great law student. I did it in French, so it's not that easy. But the papers I was able to write in English. Anyway, so my prediction already then was the copyrights and patents and all that stuff came in with the printing press. It was like a physical media thing, and will go out with the printing press. Now, I think I'm going to be right about it, but it doesn't matter. I do like Terrence Howard a lot, and he needs to see the Bitcoin thing because he'll get a lot more out of it, right? Anyway, go back. This is what Jung describes as this psychological rule. The psychological rule says that when an inner situation is not made conscious, it happens outside as fate. That is to say, when the individual remains undivided and does not become conscious of his inner opposite, the world must perforce act out the conflict and be torn into opposing halves. So what he's saying here is, if you don't merge with your shadow, if you don't encounter it, if you don't go through the process of individuation, right, then what happens is you get these psychological eruptions. You end up looking stupid and retarded, like America now. It looks retarded, right? Absolutely retarded. And the reason is the money itself doesn't allow it to perform this encounter with its shadow. That's where it's become this hegemonic thing, right? The oscillations, I would say, between Bitcoin and America are the same, right? The ego and the shadow run between being either a revolutionary force or an imperial power. It doesn't have to choose. It is both at once. It's part of those spectrums, and it rotates between these things, which is a funny sort of cosmological connection that there is between Bitcoin and America. Did you know this? That the longest day of the year and the shortest day of the year are not the equinoxes, right? It's not December 20 whatever 1st, 2nd, and June 21st whatever 2nd, right? Those are the longest days and the shortest days, but they are not the longest and shortest distance between Earth and the sun. They're not. The actual dates are about a week later, and they're July 4th and January 3rd, the birthday of Bitcoin and the birthday of America. And so weirdly, on these amazing celestial events, Bitcoin and America run through this incredible dynamic that they share together, this oscillation between imperial force and revolutionary power. And guess what, guys? It's not true that just because we have Bitcoin, we're going to fix all the world's problems, right? We're going to fix a lot, most of the ones that are, high level and are really affecting quality of life, but they're still going to be bad people. It's not going to fix wealth inequality totally, right? It'll fix it so that we can help everyone. We can allocate resources to the sludge people so that we can keep them alive, but it doesn't make them instantly rich at all, right? That can't happen that way. So we have this sort of, it breaks the feedback loops. Exactly. It breaks the feedback loops, right? The feedback loops are what's important here. You need the feedback loop, and America simply does not have the feedback loop. That's what Encounter really is. It's taking inventory. It's the feedback loop. It's to know the score of the game. Now, Bitcoiners understand this, and it's one of the reasons why we have this tremendous advantage. And now you can see, if you go through what's going on in America right now, you can see that this encounter with the shadow is not just suppressed, it's being hidden all over the place. And Balaji bringing it up today, and it comes right down to banking. Right? You can see it in the banking sector. So at once you've got everyone laughing about why don't people love Biden for the economy? The economy's great. Oh my God, right? But we understand it's not, right? We can see that we're living through some sort of depression here. When people say, what's it going to look like when America goes into depression? Well, when I look around, it looks exactly the same as those pictures I saw from the 30s. I see a bunch of loser types on the street, begging for money. I see all that stuff. Now, I don't want to say full, I don't want to necessarily, it's not about being a loser. The system has screwed up. Now, I don't want to make them sound like a victim either. You all have personal responsibility in this stuff. So I don't want to take any cheap shots on people who've had a hard time, right? I get it. It hasn't been easy. It hasn't been easy. One of the arguments I make about Bitcoin and the world we don't want, this is what I've been saying to the crypto people forever. We don't want a world where you need to be a 130 IQ and a computer science engineer and a Series 7 license holder to trade on Wall Street. I mean, it's just too much for people to keep up with. We need a better system that doesn't require so much cognitive load to participate in. And that's one thing we can actually do, right? But just imagine trying to figure this out. If you didn't know what was going on in the world, and you were just listening to these articles, right? Like Eyelash-O said, right? This is how you get a dumb population. This is how they can be manipulated so easily, right? He said, low info and politically polarized citizenry is capable of believing anything, right? And so here's the thing that Balaji's been tracking for a while. And this is even hard for people who follow this stuff every day. But it turns out what we found out from the bank troubles a year ago when the FTX thing happened and all that cascade of stuff happened, and then we started seeing Silicon Valley Bank have trouble, and First Republic recently, and Signature Bank, and these others. Weirdly, only the banks that dealt with crypto companies, by the way, right? We should never forget that. Balaji says here, they're starting to disclose how severe the banking crisis was. So think about what was suppressed, right? 20% of banks had net outflows exceeding 5 standard deviations of historicals. Some banks lost 10% of assets in one day. The crisis was paused only when the BTFP on March 12th swept under the rug for now, but not forever. So going into exactly what happened, right? The FRBNY researchers say that 22 banks experienced the bank run, right? On the one hand, this implies that over 10 times more banks faced a run during this period than failed. On the other hand, runs were less widespread than suggested by the decline in bank stock prices. Well, so this was the New York Fed research, right? Talking about the bank runs in real time. Now, put that into context about what's happening with the rest of the world, right? So we're starting to see that the US banking trouble is becoming public knowledge, that the US economy as the main psychological engine of the world economy is breaking down. And it's not going to last much longer. We've got Janet Yellen on the road, right? She's talking with the G7 people. Remember how awesome I said it was going to be to have Janet Yellen? So people were talking about the predictions of crypto and Bitcoin and everything becoming the center of politics. Yeah, that was one of my predictions. But watching Janet Yellen go on the road and try and sell this show is the funniest thing. And it would lead to revelations. It would lead to people opening their eyes. That I think was the bigger prediction that I made over the last 2 years, that 2024 wasn't just going to be about Bitcoin getting to the center of the political conversation. It was going to be the fun of watching people open their eyes to like, what the fuck is going on, right? It's been fun, right? So now again, you got Janet Yellen on the road trying to pick up the pieces, and it's perfect. Joe Biden sends Janet Yellen on the road. Janet, can you save America? Can you do it, Janet? Oh, I can save it, Joe. I'm going to save America. I'm going to go get him. It's going to be great. I'm going to save America. So they sent her on the road, right? Janet Yellen's on the road to save America. This Team America. Fuck yeah, Janet Yellen. So she's out there and she says this is her plan now, right? She tried global taxation 2 years ago, failed. Now her new thing, right? U.S. Secretary Janet Yellen said on Thursday that G7 finance ministers will discuss their concerns. She's going to get all the people and we're going to be concerned with what? What are they concerned about? China's excess industrial capacity. That's their concern. That China is making too much shit and it's going to win the entire manufacturing war in the world, right? So she's saying, adding that without policy changes in Beijing, their economies will be hit with a flood of cheap Chinese goods. So basically the world can't keep up. And it doesn't matter because we're seeing it, right? It's already happening. If you look out east to what's happening, you see this metaplanet thing that, what's his name? Dylan LeClaire is involved in, right? They're running the micro strategy thing in Japan because they can get cheap money from the Japanese banks, and then they use it to buy Bitcoin, and then they use more cheap money to buy Bitcoin, and they use the spreads on the yield and blah, blah. It's all a lot of fun. Basically free money to buy Bitcoin with, right? What Michael Saylor's been doing. So here's what's going on over there. You need to immediately, this is from Wall Street Silver, focus on what's happening in the East. The Japanese 30-year yield just crossed 2% and is now at the highest level since 2011. On the other hand, the USD Japan yen, even after softer CPI, weaker NFP data, and a $60 billion intervention, is still hovering around 156.5. The Bank of Japan has no options left but to hike rates. This has grave consequences for the entire financial system. At the same time, you've got China ramping up de-dollarization efforts. This is from 2 days ago, by dumping a record amount of US bonds. So no one's buying. Janet was on a bond buying thing the other day and it didn't work out, right? She failed at that. She went to China. She ate the mushrooms. It didn't work. They didn't buy. Yellen, what are you doing? You're not good. You're not selling. Sell. You got to sell. You got to be a salesman. It's no academic time. It's no time to be like, you remember the thing that Janet Yellen did in her career to get her credentialist job? She did a PhD. The PhD was, how much can you pay someone until they will feel in debt to you to work harder, but if you pay them too much, they'll just give up and not work hard enough. It was basically like, what's the appropriate whiplash, power, and speed to get the most out of your slave? That's her thing. That's what she's known for, right? So they send her with no experience in sales to save America. Janet Yellen, right? Doesn't matter. The Chinese don't give a shit, right? They're selling. So she's out there saying, no, we got to do something else in China because they're not buying the bonds anymore, because they're not going to buy them in Japan anymore either. So that's why you see the following article, right? This comes from, I think, Bloomberg, saying the U.S. economy is headed for a hard landing this year and deep rate cuts are the only solution, Citi chief economist says. And Wall Street Silver says the U.S. dollar is deteriorating. Purchasing power is non-existent due to trillions of dollars being printed out of thin air. By 2030, we won't own anything because everything will literally cost an arm and a leg. Now, he's talking about fiat NPC Americans. We understand that this is inevitable. There's no way out of this. It's been like this. It's been written in the stars for a while now, and it can't be erased, right? So this is the process of the integration. This is what it looks like. This is what this sort of degradation appears like, and this is what we're seeing in front of us. And you can see it manifesting itself all around, right? Now, we can wonder how deliberate this was or accidental it was. My sort of frame for reality begins with follow the money, right? Follow the money should be your any circumstance you see in the news, your number one frame, the first lens you put on it is follow the money. The second one I put is incompetence over malice, right? So when I look at Janet Yellen and Joe Biden, I follow the money. I can see the incentives, how it's broken. Then I go and I see my next filter, incompetence over malice, right? And I'm like, it's incompetence, right? Now, when I see someone like James Comey, who came around yesterday, I start to change my mind, right? I start to see the preferences that were made from a policy choice to basically not even care about the money system, just care about the power that the security state in America has. So James Comey did a big media tour yesterday. I don't know if you saw this, right? James Comey out there doing a media tour. He says, Trump is coming for the FBI and DOJ. He knows their power, and I think he regrets that, and he didn't work hard enough to corrupt them the last time. So he's coming for them, and that's a danger to all Americans. So, of course, he's going to get space dropped, so he's got to do this, right? His life is on the line. MSNBC says a second Trump term is a danger for all Americans. He's coming for the Justice Department and the FBI. Newsman says, my favorite James Comey interview was when he went on national television to help perpetuate the conspiracy theory Donald Trump was secretly behind being controlled by the Kremlin through sexual blackmail, even after he knew the political origins of the Steele dossier. Well, he was the leaker, right? We all understand that, right? He was the leaker. Molly Hemingway writes, as disgusting as this vile liar James Comey is, remember also how evil George Stephanopoulos and nearly every other corporate media person was in how they peddled for years this absurd lie that Trump stole the 2016 election by colluding with Russia. Now, what all of this now and for incompetence, right? So you can think of these guys as evil. There's cases for incompetence. You know, that Mark Elias guy. I can't do as many chins as he have. I'm gonna try. He's just got so much. He's like a camel. He keeps his seed oil here, right? He just, in case he needs an injection of seed oil, it's just waiting for him right here. He's like that, you know, the Russian guy who put the seed oil rate, the vegetable oil rate to make his arms really big, right? I think Mark Elias, just like a camel, has a separate thing here for his seed oil supply. So he's out there. Mark Elias, if you don't know, is the big elections rigger for the liberals, for the Democrats. He's the guy who got all the mail-in ballots things going. And so yesterday we found this story that and it's going to go away. Biden isn't on the ballot, I guess, in Ohio. He missed something, and they'll fix it. It's fine, right? But he did his big video. He went on all the fake news blaming the GOP for it, right? So he's there. He calls it the latest Republican stunt in Ohio. Is just the latest erosion of their commitment to democracy and democratic norms. So he's trying to turn it, right? But this is incompetence. This is what incompetence looks like. Mike Howell says, this is one of the funniest comic twists in political history. Elias L. were so busy trying and failing to get Trump off ballots that they forgot to make sure Biden actually got on the ballot in Ohio. Epic fail. Now, I'm sure they'll figure it out. Now, the reason I'm bringing all this up, I want to underline there is incompetence. It's a real thing. Right? It's a real thing. I won't acknowledge most of what you see out there, most of what you see going on can be explained by incompetence. All right. I believe that. I won't waver from that. Right. But there is malice. There are also evil people. Some of this is by design. Some of it looks like the Bolshevik thing that happened to the Russians and the Soviets 100 years ago. It looks like the same battle plan. It looks almost identical to what happened, the Bolshevik thing with the original Russian Revolution. And so yesterday, Tucker Carlson made a statement on this exact fact. And this is what he said, right? He says, the people who run our country are destroying it, and they're doing it on purpose. And there's no doubt about that in my mind. And I've withheld judgment for a number of years now. I think a lot of us did that, right? When I worked for the Prime Minister in Canada, and I worked for that administration he took power in 2006. I worked a little bit then. I came back when I finished law school in 2009 and worked for them until I quit to do Bitcoin stuff. And, I got to see people who went to the Bilderberg stupid group and they would make fun of it, saying stupid European people. I got to see enough but this was what I was looking for. Is there some form of cabal out there that we can't see? Or is it just as stupid as you think? Is it just clown world? And I left unsure about the answer. Like, I still couldn't figure it out, right? And as many lords and all these people as I'd met, as top secret security clearance that I had, and access to everything, and I had the ability to haul, our CIA people in and ask them questions. They had to answer me. I had a higher security clearance than they did. And I still left saying, I don't give a fuck, I'm going into Bitcoin. But the answer still wasn't there. But as I've seen this stuff play out, as I've seen what happened to Trump, as I've seen what happened to the manipulation of the financial system, and the known consequences would be there. The whole point here being that people are not even paying attention to this frame, right? That you can't not encounter the the mutated form that America is taking with all this trouble, right? So he comes out and says, there's no doubt about that in my mind, and I've withheld judgment for a number of years now. But with what they've done at the border, completely changing the population of the country, letting in millions and millions of people who have no connection to the United States, can't possibly help our country, can't possibly unify our very fractured civic culture, and whose loyalty to a knowledge of the United States is completely in question. In fact, their identities are in question. We don't know who they are, and they're coming through a country in the middle of a drug war. The whole thing is not, by the way, bad management, or they're not doing their job. No, they're destroying the United States on purpose. And so I'll begin with that. So the idea that those same people are going to somehow affect positive change in Eastern Europe, a region they know nothing about, and it's demonstrable, they don't know anything at all, and it's insane to me. And the fact that Republican leaders who really are either, in many cases, they just don't know, or they're controlled, that is true, are on board with it, is just infuriating, right? So indeed, we're seeing more and more that people like James Comey, that people that are attached to this deep state are deliberately doing very evil things. Now, I don't know what their motivations are, right? I don't know what their motivations are. It's almost impossible to tell. But we had even more proof yesterday, right? It's finally come to light, and we've suspected this for a long time. Mike Benz has been on it, that Hunter Biden was a CIA operative. That's the reason why he's been given so much leniency and so much cover, that he was actually working on behalf of the US government to steal the Russian energy assets. Now, I don't know if that's the right decision or the wrong decision, right? I don't know. I mean, who knows, right? Who knows what the alternative looks like? Now, I believe we're on the wrong. I do, right? But Mike Benz went on Steve Bannon's show yesterday. He went on a few of these talking about this. And Ben says, let me make today's news about the CIA block. So I'll just give you the actual news. This is what we know happened, right? Just so you know. So what happened was IRS whistleblowers have been, no, that's not where it was. Let me see. The CIA summoned prosecutors to Langley, Virginia. These are the prosecutors that were going after Hunter Biden for the guns or the tax or whatever, for a classified briefing on Hunter Biden's sugar brother / balcony bong lawyer. After that, it was hands off without telling investigators why. Cernovich says the same thing. The CIA blocked the IRS from calling Hunter Biden's benefactor as a witness in its investigation into the troubled first son, according to documents released Wednesday by House Republicans. And we saw Ben saying it. Let me make today's news about CIA blocking feds from interviewing Hunter's funders simple. Burisma was being used as a corporate crowbar by the CIA to pry Russia off the gas market. Hunter helped that happen. There, no more mystery. What this really is another example of not acknowledging the money in the system. We don't even understand the incentives. You can't follow the money. It becomes impossible. The point is to obscure and obfuscate what happened financially. We don't know if this is national security. We don't know any of those things, right? We just have to take their word for it. And if you put all of this into the places that we try to cover every day here, the media, the corruption of the deep state, the psychological trouble, the manipulation of money, this is what it ends up looking like, right? We can't tell the difference. There's no way to even know. And so the main thing that we're seeing here, the main revelation we're seeing is that people indeed can't miss it anymore. Now, some can continue to sit with their head in the sand and ignore it, but more and more people are being confronted with all of these inconsistencies, and we're seeing the results now of the kind of decay that was predicted 10 years ago on 4chan and that Bitcoiners have seen coming for a while, and that are entirely predictable. If you take this frame and apply it to the national psychology of America, you would see that this malaise, this inability for the psychological engine to perpetuate forward was very predictable. And here we are, right? Which is why it's been fun. You know, you see all these things the past few days with Bill Maher, for example. Remember, so we said earlier that my prediction about Bitcoin being at the center of politics in America would be huge. And indeed, that's looks like what's happening, right? But the other thing that I said at the beginning of the show this morning, that the bigger story than the thing we love being at the center of attention and everyone talking about at the center of politics, the other story is the reason why that's even happening. One of the reasons why that's happening is because people are opening their eyes to this corruption. They're opening their eyes to just how rotten the banking system is and how many problems come about as a result of that. And now watching how this thing perpetuated and people opening up their eyes is the bigger story to me, right? And that it would be a fun year just watching it happen. Now, this Bill Maher's on a book tour, right? And you got to give him credit. He's going into all these tough places. Unlike most liberals, he's not just doing the easy stuff and the softball interviews. He's going into Republican places. He's going into MAGA spaces and talking with these people. And so he went on to the Megyn Kelly show yesterday. And here's what's good about it. When you see someone modeling their awakening live, when you see it happen live, it's a lot more persuasive. If Bill Maher would have done this off camera and been like, oh, actually, I changed my mind, it would have seemed suspicious. But he's learning stuff in real time and live. And if you see this now, not a lot of people are going to see it because he's going on channels where their folks aren't seeing, but watching people wake up. This is what he tried to do yesterday with January 6th, right? He goes on a Megyn Kelly show and he says, like, they didn't show up at the Capitol and break windows and knock doors and kill cops. And Megyn Kelly says they didn't do that. Maher says they didn't break windows and knock down. They didn't kill cops, she says. Oh, of course they did. Kelly says, no, they didn't. Who did? They died of natural causes that day, he asks. Nobody died that day. Maher says, that, no, not true. And then she says, who? Maher says, okay. She says, who? Who died? Maher says, oh, I don't remember the names. She says, they didn't. There was Brian Sicknick, who died later that day after the fact. And the coroner's report did not say it was because of what he had inhaled that day. He said it had possibly accelerated the condition that killed him. So indeed, that's why we're, why people are waking up way after the fact, because basically the shadow, the consequences, the psychological malaise that comes from not encountering your shadow at a systemic national level has now permeated the places where you can't hide it. It comes out, it manifests, it comes into the world. And the banking crisis, the crisis in confidence with the media, the crisis in confidence that we have with most of these institutions, that's why they're all failing, right? The psychological degradation that comes from not encountering with no feedback loop because of the broken money, that comes with seeing these things rotten out, is what is going to drive more and more people to abandon the old system and mock it and laugh and have fun while we switch to a new system. That's what we love, right? The dollar breaks the feedback loops. Yeah. Failure to integrate the shadow is why people get TDS. I think so. Yeah, I think so. Oh, Team Yellen. Our only hope is Yellen. Granny Yellen. Yeah. We love it. We love it. Very good. De-dollarization is happening fast. People are producing things instead of living off government checks. The economy will collapse. Yeah. De-dollarization is going to crush USA. Yeah, it is. Daniel, yeah. I didn't. I have a further. So my my filters go a little further. Maybe I'll make a board one day with it, but it starts with follow the money and then it goes to incompetence over malice. I'm not sure if blackmail is 3, but it's definitely there. But blackmail could also be follow the money, right? And silicone, which is worse than seed oil. Most people, when they low in blood, don't need a doc to verify that. A whiteboard plus the breakup is back, baby. There we go. Yeah, the fiat apocalypse is in full swing, guys. It's in full swing. We love it. We love it. Yeah, this is an old board. I didn't have time to draw one, but this worked pretty well. The screen, didn't it? It worked pretty well. It's big enough. I was thinking about getting a bigger screen, but so far so good. I'm happy with it. I'm happy with it. All right, team. That's all I got for today. I hope you have a great day. I hope you all have a great day. I'll be back again tomorrow. We're learning how to bike with my eldest daughter today. We haven't really had a great chance. My place in Vermont is a little too hilly, so it hasn't been a great learning ground. A little bit. There's sort of a flat thing, but anyway, it's not great. And my old condo here in Montreal was up the hill. The hill again, not a good place to learn. So now this year I deliberately came down to the lower part where the canal is, because this is the best biking on the continent, by the way, the best urban biking on the continent around here, and the best walking city. It was too poor to redo the whole thing like they did with American cities like Hartford. They didn't destroy Montreal like they did many others. So luckily we have the best walking city in America, in the Americas, and we love it. So, and the biking trails are, I got the canal just down here, so I can take the kids and they just have free range biking. So we're getting there. A lot of cut knees though. A lot of cut knees. But we're having fun. All right, team. That's all I got. Y'all have a great day, and I shall see you tomorrow. Peace.